The all-new 22 Civic, now on sale at Team Honda on Siegen Lane.
Hi, business owners. Phase 3. Woohoo! But do your customers know you're back? Well, that's where the Clarence Bug Show and Pelican Broadcasting can help. Right now, we've got great rates on advertising packages to help you get the word out. Shoot me an email at bugsclarence@gmail.com. Or better yet, call me up. I'd love to talk with you. 225-485-6839. Let's get together and make Phase 3 the best it can possibly be.
They said I could find you here. Why are you fishing? Our company's got to ship out 2 full color brochures and 20 color copies. You're killing me.
It's done. Designed, printed, packaged, and shipped.
How?
You just got to know the right people. Baker Printing, the printing people.
How come you get to fish in this private lake?
Like I said, you just got to know the right people. You can know the right people too.
Hello guys, it's Debbie. It's time. I've got a brand new location. 10510 Airline Highway, Baton Rouge, next to After 5 Tuxedos. We have the perfect spot to get all your wedding and formal wear needs. Come see our one-of-a-kind name brand and get great prices. With 30 years experience, the best customer service anywhere. It's Debbie's Bridal, Airline Highway, Baton Rouge. See you soon.
Welcome to today's edition of the Clarence Bug Show. Here's hoping that all is well with you and yours in your world. Since the last time we had the opportunity to spend a little time with you and yours, roughly some 24 hours ago. I am so pleased today to start the show with, I know we're on time segments here, so I'll condense it. The hardest working man in the business.
Really? Is he here?
One of the greatest guys in the business.
Again.
Slash, just a good all-around guy. And more than anything else, I am honored and privileged to call him a friend. Edwin W. Edwards, biographer, well-known media personality, and again, all-around great guy, Leo Honeycutt. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Clarence. And, of course, I cut my teeth in television and writing and creative things in general with your brother, Ed. And
yeah.
I always think of every time I hear your voice, I hear
Bless
Ed.
your heart. You know, it's so funny. People tell me all the time how much we sounded alike. Mm-hmm. And I could never hear it. So one day I'm at Channel 9 in the sports department, and I'm walking through the newsroom, and I hear my voice. And I go, what could we conceivably be running? Because this was like on a Friday. I'd been off since Monday. What could we conceivably still be running that would be relevant this many days later? So I turned to the TV, and it's my brother on Channel. I'm like, son of a gun. Wow. This is what people have been telling me for years.
See, you thought it was you.
Yeah,
yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Let's start with the fact that you were, as a journalist, honored to have the position of biographer for Edwin Washington Edwards. How are you holding up after all this? I can't imagine being a biographer and not developing a kinship, a friendship, almost akin to being a family member. How are you holding up in this?
And we did begin, we got pretty close because, I did spend 5 years with him writing this book.
Right.
Which is 3 years longer than I had anticipated it would take.
Right.
Because we finished with the first draft after 3 years was 1,800 pages and 3,000 footnotes.
Wow. And
then we had to consolidate because I said, Governor, even you're not going to read a book that long on you.
Well, yeah.
And so we cut it down to 620-something pages. And it took 2 years to do that, to cut 2/3 of the book out. So what that means is I actually have 2/3 of another book that I could write.
Right.
But he called through Jim Brown, and Jim Brown called up and said, you're on the short list to write the Edwards book. And I said, well, Jim, I don't really know that I care to be on it at all because there's a lot about him I don't like.
Right.
And he said, and Jim said, Well, you telling me you wouldn't A, want to write one of the most historical books in Louisiana history, and B, that you're somehow not still the same objective reporter that you were? And I said, oh, okay, all right. So,
you talked me into it.
So I went over and I talked to him, and I said, as long as we understand from the get-go that we've got to throw in the bad along with the good. We can't just edit this so that it makes you look like the shining light.
Right.
He said, yeah, I can live with that. Now, that 5-year period, we had a lot of skirmishes in which he said, no, I don't want you to put that in. No, I don't want to put this in. I don't want to put that in. I go, okay, well, if we don't put this in and people already know about it, which they do, or they think they know about it, then that means all the rest of the good things you talk about are going to unravel, and they're not going to believe it.
Right.
So it took the better part of 5 years to convince him you got to put in the worst with the best in order for all of it to balance and make sense.
Not to mention the fact that your credibility
there you go.
Would be at stake as well. Right. What do you think his legacy will be, and how many legacies will there be? I mean, meaning there's a legacy for liberals, there's a legacy for conservatives, there's a legacy for this group, for that group, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, we talked about that a lot, especially in the last years, and he was a fiscal conservative. He forced the budget to be balanced by the time the legislature ended every session.
Right.
He forced, and he said, if we don't, vetoes, we're about to veto. And so he was today, I mean, he even told me one time, he said, probably today I'd be a Republican because of my fiscal conservativeness.
Right.
But of course, he was never going to be far away from trying to help the man who didn't have the voice, the men and the women across the state who are not of means and don't have the voice at the legislature. Because you know and I know that when money and power come together, that's a recipe for anything, usually disaster.
Right.
And so it's amazing that governments work at all. But in his case, he was about coalitions. He wanted to get the left and the right together. And back then, you didn't have so much left and right. You had so many moderates that people not only got along during the day, but they also partied at night when the legislature was in session. Because you and I got invited to those parties.
That's right. That's right.
But now, because districts have been gerrymandered to produce a certain candidate, a Republican or a Democrat or a black or a white or a rich or a poor or name it.
Right.
Now what you've done is you've produced extremists who don't feel beholden to give any or compromise any. So what do you have? Gridlock.
Yeah.
Congress.
I think it's maybe, Leo, part of the human experience that, as well known as an individual may be, many times we don't find out certain things about them until they pass.
Right.
For example, all these years covering politics, all these years in the business, I never knew the guy's middle name was Washington. Never knew that until, news stories came out, et cetera, et cetera. Tell us something about Edwin that you think most of us don't know.
Well, when he was about 6 years old, I guess it was, he went to a gathering at I think it was a family gathering, a big family reunion, whatever. Anyway, so he, as he was prone to do, he acted up, and he always had that quick wit, and he was kind of going on, maybe got a little bit out of his lane there. And his mother grabbed him by the earlobe and pulled him out on the porch and said, "I'm telling you, you need to simmer down and shut up."
Right.
And she told the story. She said, he looked up at me and he said, "One day when I'm governor, you're not going to be able to do that."
Wow.
At 6.
At 6.
Yeah.
Wow. What do you think, Leo, today's politicians could learn from Edwin Edwards?
Oh, they could learn a lot, because I learned a lot. I mean, he was one of the few people I knew that became more optimistic the older he got. I don't know. I mean, people usually get a little bitter because they feel like that their time's out and they can't get things done that they really wanted to do. Edwards had done so much that by the time he got to the end, he just stayed optimistic. And the way he did that was, I showed up one day in prison, and he said, he really had this, pensive look on his face. And I said, "What's up with you?" He said, "Leo, I want you to write this down on your heart. If you want to live a long and happy life, never hold a grudge."
Wow.
And I looked around and I said, "With all due respect, Governor, we're in prison.
And if anybody could, it would have been him."
That's right. And he said, "Yes, it is." He said, "That is true." But he said, "Never hold a grudge, and that's the way you can have a long, happy life, or at least some chance to have a happy life." Because he said people so often camp around the bad things that have happened to them, whether they deserved it or not, And usually they don't think they do.
Right.
And he said if you camp around that, that's all you think about, and it will hamper you from your future.
Mm-hmm. We are spending a couple of segments today with Leo Honeycutt, official biographer for the now late former Governor Edwin W. Edwards. I told you all yesterday that I didn't spend any time talking about his passing because, one, time constraints, but more than anything, I wanted the perspective of someone that had unique, unfettered access to him, and that's why Leo Honeycutt is with us today. Leo, how do you think he would have fared in today's political world with social media, the intense divisiveness in politics? How do you think he would have fared today?
Well, we talked about that as well, and frankly, he told everybody who came to him, and let me tell you, a lot of people came to him asking what he thought about them running for a certain office.
Right.
And I have to tell you that he advised everybody in the last 5 or 6 years, don't run.
Wow.
Because he said what I did. He said at the time that I was running and getting all the criticism that I got, I didn't realize how much that was going to hurt my family. He said my family became collateral damage to my career.
Wow.
And he said, and you know what? When I found that out when we were working together on the book, and I had always assumed that, you know, he got that crook mentality or that crook moniker that was put onto him.
Right.
And I thought, well, you know, he had a thick skin, so he didn't care one way or the other. And what I didn't realize is that his kids were reading that same thing as it went along, and it was about their father.
Wow.
And it hurt them. It hurt them forever. I mean, I sometimes wonder if they've ever recovered from that.
Wow. Was he the epitome of the American dream? Small town Louisiana guy ascending to heights that most of us can not even begin to imagine. And is his story, the good and the bad, one of those that exemplifies the greatness of this country?
I think you just summed it up. I mean, I do. I mean, Clarence, that's it. I mean, that is that he epitomizes the American dream because he came strictly out of poverty. It's the same Horatio Algier story about a guy who starts in the dirt and then has to work his way up. But let's put it into perspective. For whatever reason, Edwin Edwards was born with a superior intellect, a superior brain, because he had a photographic memory that he could keep all this stuff in his head. He kept 144 lawmakers like chessmen on a chess set.
Wow.
He knew exactly where they were at any given moment of any given day. He knew what their political persuasion was, knew who they were married to, knew who their kids were, knew where they went to church, to school, and all that was in his Rolodex in his head. And he could pull it up in a second.
Wow.
And so I would ask, you can imagine, I asked so many lawmakers that worked with him that, retired or were gone, or even people who were still there.
Right.
And they said there's one, even his detractors, the people who really didn't like him, said there's one thing I can say good about Edwin Edwards. If he told you something, you could take it to the bank. If he was for it, he would be for it. If he was against it, he would usually tell you how you could still get it passed without his support.
Wow.
So he was always working, and so I would laugh sometimes, like John Alario and someone, and I would say, well, weren't all governors like that? And they would laugh me off the porch. And they would regale me with stories about certain leaders that would tell them one thing in the governor's office, and 10 minutes later would be railing against it 180 degrees on the floor.
We are spending a little time with a dear friend, all-around good guy, and official biographer of the now late Edwin W. Edwards. We'll get this first break of the hour out of the way, and we'll spend a little more time with Leo when we come back on today's edition of the Clarence Bug Show here on the Pelican. Stay close.
I owed the IRS $10,000.
The IRS garnished my wages.
They put a lien on my house.
I'm self-employed and didn't report all my income. They claim I owe a lot more than I do.
The IRS is the most powerful collection agency in the world. They do not give up until you pay.
I couldn't sleep. We were being audited. I called Tax Solutions Now, and a great big weight was lifted off my shoulders.
I called Tax Solutions Now, and they got the IRS off my back.
Tax Solutions Now had my wage garnishment lifted in 48 hours.
Tax Solutions Now can get you help. Our agents know the rules, can stop the pain, and get you the best deal.
Tax Solutions Now saved my business.
I qualified for the Fresh Start program. I paid less than I owed.
We connect you with a team of former IRS agents and tax professionals who get the IRS off your back. Time is running out. Call Tax Solutions now.
Call 800-778-4345. 800-778-4345.
Live and play on the fairway at Greystone Golf and Country Club, a serene, challenging golf destination located in Denham Springs. For tee times and membership opportunities, go to GreystoneCountryClub.com.
Go where summer leads you in an award-winning Mazda CUV. Find yours during Mazda's season of discovery.
Call, click, or come by and discover your new Mazda today at Baton Rouge's Mazda dealer, Team Mazda on Airline.
Bolello's Furniture and Appliances, your dependable independent. Depend on us for service, for selection, for price. Get huge Whirlpool savings. Shop now and save on Whirlpool appliances throughout the store. Plus, experience our price match guarantee and ask about special financing. You can depend on the know-how of people who live appliances every day. Bolello's Furniture and Appliances, your dependable independent with nationwide buying power.
The Post on Church Point, a brand new event venue owned and managed by the VFW Post 3693, welcomes you to the bridal show of the future. Come out and enjoy the food, dancing, meet and greet with vendors, and win amazing prizes. Friday, August 6th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. For tickets, please visit thepostbridalshowgonzales.com or follow on Instagram. Located at 42430 Church Point Road, Gonzales. Vendor space is very limited, so hurry to secure your spot.
Hi, I'm Bobby Yarborough with Manda Fine Meats. Here at Manda, we know what the folks of South Louisiana love. They love great flavored smoked sausage, delicious deli meats, and specialty items like boudin and andouille sausage. Manda Fine Meats has been providing these products since 1947. We produce them right here in Baton Rouge, so you know you're always getting the freshest product at your local grocery store. Manda Fine Meats. Taste the fresh local flavor in everything we make. Make it Manda every time.
Welcome back to today's edition of the Clarence Bug Show. Spending some time with Leo Honeycutt, a great friend, great guy, and the official biographer of the late former Louisiana Governor Edwin W. Edwards. Well, what was it about Edwin Leo that allowed him to connect with so many people of so many varying backgrounds?
Man, that's a great question, because when he introduced Jack Kennedy in October of 1959 to the Crowley International Rice Festival, Jack Kennedy and Jacqueline had flown in to do a sweep across the South, South Louisiana, that is, which really was his first campaign stop in the 1960 presidential election.
Wow.
But here's the deal. That was 90 days before he officially announced.
Okay.
So he came to South Louisiana, I believe, to test the waters in a pro-Catholic environment, since he would be the first Catholic president.
Right.
And so anyway, Edwin Edwards is the president that year of the International Rice, and he introduces him.
Right.
And so he watched him that whole day, and he said, here's a man who had nothing in common with these Acadians in South Louisiana.
Right.
You know, pretty much a fairly rich Maharaja from Massachusetts, from a very powerful family.
Right.
And these are people who were canoeing in pirogues.
Yeah.
And he said, that man never missed a beat.
Wow.
He connected with them on a one-on-one basis, on a human level, and everybody loved him. And he said, we were in the car in the motorcade at one point, and he said it kind of stopped, you know, as motorcades will do.
Right.
And he said people just flooded into the car, and they started, you know, like shaking hands, and they wanted to talk to Jackie Kennedy.
Right.
Because Jackie had said something on the podium that day, and she spoke in French, and it just brought the house down.
Wow.
And so he said it was kind of funny, because when that started to happen and people would come up to the car, he said they would go, well, hey, Senator, good to see you. And they would turn and talk to Jackie. They wanted to talk to her.
Right.
And so he said, I learned from that you just have to be real to people. You have to be sincere and genuine. And he said, I'm already that, because he was negotiating contracts with oil companies with these poor Cajuns that were down on the coast that had property that they wanted to lease.
Right.
And he was making sure that they didn't get taken advantage of. That's when his reputation began. That's when people said, this is a guy you can trust. Then he was on Crowley City Council. Then he became a state senator and a floor leader for John McKithen. Then he went to Congress. Right. And then, of course, we all know he became governor.
Right. Speaking of that time in the governorship, things being what things were and what they are, led to a prison stint for Edwin. What was it about him that allowed him as a person to come out of that experience, not be bitter, and be philosophical about that?
Well, there was a lot that he probably could have been bitter about. And, of course, he was obviously not happy with the outcome of the trial.
Yeah.
And when you go back, I specifically wanted to study and take apart that trial. I wanted to know for myself what actually happened. And I've spent 3 years in the basement of Middleton Library, and I spent a lot of time. I spent a year just going over the transcripts of the trial.
Right.
And when I piece all that stuff together and I look at what happened, the way that trial was conducted, that jury really should have been a hung jury. I mean, there's a lot of different details about it I can't get into now because we don't have enough time.
Right.
But if anybody really wanted to find out what happened to Edwin Edwards, you should read that chapter on the trial because it truly was unconstitutional what happened. It was unconstitutional.
Wow.
And so that alone should have made anybody bitter.
Yeah.
But the very fact that there was a prescription at that time for the charge of 5 years, Judge Polizzola, because he's the federal judge, decided to double that. He just arbitrarily decided to double it to 10 years.
Right.
And so that's why Edwards had to serve 8.5 years in prison. Otherwise, he would have only served about 4.5.
Wow.
But here's the same guy that when I walked in one day and he says, if you want to live a long, happy life, don't hold a grudge.
Wow. It's leave it to you to make me feel old. But when you said Judge Polizzola, I immediately said to myself, Judge Frank Polizzola? And I'm saying to myself, dude, you remember his first name? Leave it to Leo to come in here and make you feel old on this. Will we ever see another the likes of Edwin Edwards, or has politics degenerated to the point where it's no longer conducive for that to happen?
Well, remember now, when Edwards was in power and he was making the quips and the cuts to the against the press, and I was a member of the press, which is the reason why I didn't really care for him.
Right.
Because to me, he came off as being arrogant and too flip on really important issues. And if you kept pressing him, like the Associated Press reporter Guy Coates, who was there for about 30 years, along with Brenda Hodge at Channel 2.
Yeah.
And Brenda and Guy would tag team this guy, Edwin, and Edwin would keep trying to put him off with answers that they considered flip, and finally he would turn on him and he would say something that would cut him at the knees.
Right.
And I didn't like that.
Right.
See?
Well, of course.
I didn't like
Yeah.
it. But and so what he did is he opened himself up, and he realized that years later. We were writing the book. He said, I know that I created my own trouble. And I said, yes, you did. But you're not alone in that. We all are our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
And I told him many times, you were so quick-witted, you should have just become a comedian, a stand-up comedian. I mean, you would have been bigger than Bob Hope and Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And he said, don't you think I think about that? I mean, because he joked the other night, a week ago Monday night, it was the last lucid time that he and I got to have a conversation. And we were trying to get him off the bed, and the hospice nurse was on one side, Trina was on the other, and he had a really strong grip, and he was pulling this way, and he jerked my arms for a second and made me look at him, and he said, I'm running again, don't you? What? You're running again?
Right.
He said, yes, I'm running for the bathroom. Now get out of the way. 1 month from being 94 years old.
Wow. Still with that razor sharp wit. What was most rewarding for you in getting this inside, unfettered access to a guy that you admitted when you started out and were approached about the idea, I really didn't care that much for the guy?
Yeah, and that was probably a flip answer on my part. I've always been in love with my state, my home state, Louisiana, and the Louisiana history and the political realm, which is why I got into journalism, which is why I started covering stuff at the legislature, which I did not do on a full-time basis. There's a lot more people who cover the legislature on a full-time basis, but I was in and out.
Right.
But I did interviews with Edwards over the years, I mean, starting back at about 1978. Anyway, the point is that what I learned through this whole process is that the man was really human and cared about people on a he listened to problems. You know,
Right.
people called up with problems. He listened to them. He tried his best to take. In fact, when he consolidated the state agencies from 267, which was unwieldy, we had people on the payroll we didn't even know where they were.
Right.
He consolidated down to 15 cabinet level positions.
Wow.
So he could keep his fingers on it, and he called in the cabinet, every week and said, what's going on here, there, and there.
Right.
So he kept up that way, but he delegated authority, see, and he said, you've got 48 hours. You have 48 hours to return every phone call, every every letter, every whatever, every email. You've got 48 hours because he said if they start calling the governor's office trying to get an answer, then I don't need you. So you're fired.
Right.
And I thought,
Wow.
he's talking big now, years after the fact.
Right.
Well, I talked to some of those department heads. They said, no, my God, he was serious.
Son of a
He
gun.
would call us in right after New Year's every year and say, 48 hours.
Wow.
And he said, we all knew what he meant. And he said, if they start calling me, I don't need you.
You could probably today, Leo, walk around any part of Louisiana, walk up randomly to 100 Louisianians, ask them their opinion of Edwin Washington Edwards, and out of 100 people, you might come up with 102 different answers.
Right.
One thing I don't think anyone could ever contest is the fact that this guy loved his Louisiana.
He did. He was Louisiana. I mean, he was the embodiment of it. And not for everybody. I mean, he was criticized for gambling and criticized for all kinds of things. And he's somehow credited with having brought gambling to Louisiana, but that's really not true. The legislature under Buddy Romer is the one who passed all the bills for gambling, so including the lottery. So he didn't really bring the gambling in, but because he was a gambler, he was saddled with that.
Right.
But as far as the Cajun culture, as far as he didn't have there was nobody that wasn't a friend. Even his detractors loved hanging out with him.
Right.
I mean, he took, after the 1983 election, and he won by a landslide, to expunge that $4 million debt, he took 617 people to Paris for the big Paris trip, and they paid like $10,000 a piece, and that's what paid off the debt.
Right.
But not half the plane, but probably 25% of the plane were people who didn't like him, or people who voted against him, or people who were Republicans that didn't like him. I mean, it was crazy because a lot of people that went didn't really like him, but they liked being around him.
Yeah, yeah. Based on what you were able to ascertain in writing his life story, for young people out there watching right now that may be considering a life in politics or just a venture into it, best advice you think Edwin Edwards would give them?
Well, I told you earlier, he pretty much advised everybody the last 5 years, don't subject yourself or your family to that. And that's really a shame because we are seeing it probably more like that. People who probably are qualified and have the chutzpah or the means or the intellect to want to try to help lead are off to the sidelines now because whatever you say or do is going to wind up being either on social media or captured someplace, and it's going to be taken out of context. So that just happens constantly. And so you can't blame people for not wanting to run, but somebody's got to run. Somebody's got to do something because we do need to, get this state going. And when he was there, everybody remembers the bad, of course, with the trials and everything else. But I mean, here's a guy who in 1974, his second legislative session in his first term, he was able to override big oil and get the severance tax changed from 25 cents a barrel to 12.5% of value because
and a state like ours, that was monumental.
Oh, it was huge because we became the most cash-rich state in the nation by 1979 when New York City was going bankrupt.
That's right.
So he was able to, he knew that the Arab oil embargo was going to skyrocket oil prices, and he wanted Louisiana to ride up that curve, and we did. And it was, in fact, it was so successful that when Ted Kennedy decided he was going to take on Jimmy Carter for the Democratic nomination in 1980, he called up Edwin Edwards and said, if you can do for the nation what you did for the state of Louisiana, I want you to be my running mate.
Wow. So,
of course, we all, he didn't get the nomination, so the rest is history.
Wow. He is a guy that is well-versed in many areas. He is a guy that was granted inside and unfettered access to, depending on what side of political ideology you reside on, the most popular or the most vilified individual in the history of Louisiana politics. He is a friend and a good guy. And you think, I've got to imagine, lastly, typically interest in individuals after they die becomes much greater than what it was at the height of their popularity in the midst of their lives. Folks that want to get the book,
I was afraid you were going to bring that up because the book is out of print.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so people have been scrambling online trying to get a copy of it from people who were selling the book.
Right.
And I don't even know if Amazon's got any books left.
Wow.
Because it was such a run on it. And my website is down, so I'm not even selling the book.
Right.
And I can't even say that I've got that many. I don't have many in storage, so I don't have but a few left anyway. I'm probably just going to save it for my family.
Yeah.
But if you can get a book, more power to you.
Well, for those of you that already
or
have
go to the library. The library's got
the
plenty of
library.
them.
Yeah. Great thought. Great thought. My friend, I could sit here and talk to you forever.
Well, we'll have to do that sometime.
I know you are in high demand these days. Thank you so much for the time. He is Leo Honeycutt, and did a great job on the book, by the way. Those of you that have it, of course, you already know this. I'm not revealing any earth-shaking revelation to you and yours. Bottom of the hour break. We'll get this done, and we will continue soldiering on today's edition of the Clarence Bugg Show, only on the Pelican. Stay close.
Got termites? Get Premier Pest. PremierPestServices.com.
Hi, I am Dr. Farrell Frugier Jr., and I am a general dentist at Frugier Family Dentistry. I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I went to Catholic High School, LSU, and LSU School of Dentistry in New Orleans, where I received my DDS degree in 1986. I always have and will continue to be committed to continuing my education, to invest in technology which makes the diagnosis and delivery of dentistry more thorough, more comfortable, and more aesthetically pleasing. In our practice, we are here to serve the patients. We want to improve their quality of life and to develop relationships with our patients. In dentistry, we have a chance to impact lives on a daily basis, not just by doing dentistry, but by getting to know them and being a part of their life. We also believe in giving back to our community. So every year, we give back to the Greater Baton Rouge Food Bank, Toys for Tots, and Mary Bird Perkins Cancer Center. Please stop by and visit our office. We would love to take care of you and your family.
Hi, I'm Hurricane Betsy Barnes.
And I'm Dr. Kay Siller with the Rocket Right Show.
We are two busy blondes on the go showing off life in Louisiana.
Watch us on Pelican Sports Network.
And Talk 107.3 FM. Check local listings for times.
Hi, business owners. Phase 3. Woohoo! But do your customers know you're back? Well, that's where the Clarence Bugg Show and Pelican Broadcasting can help. Right now, we've got great rates on advertising packages to help you get the word out. Shoot me an email at bugsclarence@gmail.com. Or better yet, call me up. I'd love to talk with you. 225-485-6839. Let's get together and make Phase 3 the best it can possibly be.
Hello guys, it's Debbie. It's time. I've got a brand new location. 10510 Airline Highway, Baton Rouge, next to After 5 Tuxedos. We have the perfect spot to get all your wedding and formal wear needs. Come see our one-of-a-kind name brand and get great prices. With 30 years experience, the best customer service anywhere. It's Debbie's Bridal, Airline Highway, Baton Rouge. See you soon.
Caught spiders? Premier Pest Services.
Welcome back to today's edition of the Clarence Bug Show. Boy, what a pleasure it was to spend a little time with my man Leo Honeycutt. For those of you that know Leo and those of you that don't, for that matter, he's the kind of guy that is never short on an answer, kind of guy that is willing to entertain always on every issue, the good and the bad. And as a media person, it's the kind of guy that you love to interview. Ironically, he is one of those individuals that you've heard the old saying, doctors make the worst patients. I'm sure you've probably heard that. You've also heard that mechanics, people that fix cars, typically drive the worst cars, maybe because they're so busy fixing ours. But there's also an adage in my line of work that people that interview people for a living typically make the worst interviews. Don't ask me why, that's just how it goes. Leo is the exception to that rule. You know, as he and I were talking, and we touched upon the divisiveness in our country today, the separation in political ideologies and the like, it brought to mind something that happened this week that is particularly bothersome to me. The disconnect in our country, and particularly the tone deafness of the current presidential administration. For those of you that grew up playing instruments, for those of you that grew up singing in choirs, you know what I mean when I say tone deaf. Some people that couldn't carry a tune if it was in a bucket and taped to their hand. They just never learned how to carry a tune, completely out of tune and out of touch with the other voices around them. This week, and sadly, unfortunately for this republic of ours, we saw the leaders of the free world once again step out and display for all of America to see exactly how out of touch they are with everyday Americans. Vice President Kamala Harris took it upon herself to insult all of rural America when attempting to justify Democrats' opposition to strengthening voter laws in our country, saying in no uncertain terms that folks in rural America, well, they don't have access to Kinko's and all these other places to photocopy IDs, and as a result, that's just another example of conservatives trying to suppress people's right to vote. Of course, now, it is not the only time that this administration has shown us in no uncertain terms just how out of touch they are with everyday Americans, and sadly, I would venture a guess it won't be the last time. As a matter of fact, enter President Joe Biden. This week, yesterday, as a matter of fact, the president, in a speech attempting to explain to Americans how conservatives are attempting to deny ordinary Americans their right to exercise their constitutional vote, ventured into the waters of the January 6th insurrection at our nation's capital. The leader of the free world and our president, and make no mistake about it, he is our president, whether you are liberal or conservative, black or white. If you are an American, he is our president. But he took the opportunity to lob, not even veiled, an obvious insult to Americans. It is as classic an example as you'll ever find of just how tone deaf this administration is. The president's words, not mine, his words, quote, "The assault on free and fair elections is just such a threat. Literally, I've said it before, we're facing the most significant test of our democracy since the Civil War. It's not hyperbole. Since the Civil War, Confederates, back then, never breached the Capitol as insurrectionists did on January 6th. I'm not saying this to alarm you. I'm saying this because you should be alarmed." He went on to say that the folks that besieged the Capitol were, quote, "worse than slave-owning Confederates in the Civil War." You heard me correct. Of the nearly estimated 750,000 people, Americans, who died in that war, fighting on both sides, to make a statement like that shows any number of things to thinking people. You hear a lot these days about how things relate to context. In what universe does this fly with you? In what universe do you make a statement like this and can come up with a, quote, context to where it's appropriate? Of course, now, this is the same administration / leader of the free world that had no problem telling us, well, black people have great ideas, but they don't have accountants and they don't have lawyers. This is the same administration that had no problem very flippantly telling my fellow Americans of color, if you can't figure out whether to vote for me or Donald Trump, then you ain't black. At some point, and maybe this explains it all. You remember at the beginning of this segment, I asked you, how many of you grew up playing instruments and or singing in a choir? And you were witness to someone in that organization, the band or the choir, that was tone deaf, had no clue that they were singing out of tune. They're out of touch with all the other instruments. And the more you told them, dude, you out of tune, the louder they played or would sing. When you're tone deaf, even when people tell you, dude, you sound bad, you don't get it. As a matter of fact, you start singing louder. I have to wonder, in giving a speech and making a statement like that the folks that breached the Capitol were worse than Confederates that owned slaves. I have to wonder, did Joe Biden on his own go off script and produce this asinine statement? Or was this written by the speech writers for the president? For those of y'all that don't know, the president very seldom, if ever, writes his own speech. The speech writers will put together a speech. President will go through it and approve portions, veto portions. Then it's rewritten to fit their style, their delivery, etc. What is painful as an American is to have to entertain the idea that someone thought one of two things if this were written for them and not simply done off the cuff. To entertain the idea that someone in the speech writing department either thought there is validity to this statement, or we can make it because the people we'll be talking to are so freaking stupid they won't catch it. Either way, these statements are such a disservice to the American people that it's embarrassing. But as I mentioned, it's not the first time we've gotten this from the administration that pushes and swears upon unity. And sadly, in all likelihood, English teachers, here we go, in 3, 2, 1, it ain't gonna be the last. One thing that will be the last after this break is this segment of the Clarence Bug Show, here and only here on the Pelican. Stay close.
Hi, I'm Bobby Yarborough with Manda Fine Meats. Here at Manda, we know what the folks of South Louisiana love. They love great flavored smoked sausage, delicious deli meats, and specialty items like boudin and andouille sausage. Manda Fine Meats has been providing these products since 1947. We produce them right here in Baton Rouge, so you know you're always getting the freshest product at your local grocery store. Manda Fine Meats. Taste the fresh local flavor in everything we make. Make it Manda every time.
Live and play on the fairway at Greystone Golf and Country Club, a serene, challenging golf destination located in Denham Springs. For tee times and membership opportunities, go to GreystoneCountryClub.com.
The Post on Church Point, a brand new event venue owned and managed by the VFW Post 3693, welcomes you to the bridal show of the future. Come out and enjoy the food, dancing, meet and greet with vendors, and win amazing prizes. Friday, August 6th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. For tickets, please visit thepostbridalshowgonzales.com or follow on Instagram. Located at 42430 Church Point Road, Gonzales. Vendor space is very limited, so hurry to secure your spot.
No one can stop me when I taste the feeling. Nothing could ever bring me down. Nothing could ever bring me down. Taste the feeling.
Sometimes life is wonderful, and sometimes it's not. Cherish the good but always be prepared for life's challenges. At Private Healthcare, we provide the peace of mind you deserve. With private healthcare, you'll get the coverage you want and healthcare you need. If your employer doesn't supply healthcare coverage and you don't qualify for Medicare or Medicaid, you need to give us a call right now. Private healthcare is private health insurance for ages 65 and under with medical, dental, vision, and even prescription coverage. When life comes at you unexpectedly, you need to be ready. And health insurance is your financial safety net. Health insurance has never been so easy and affordable. If you're looking for health coverage at the best price and your annual household income is $35,000 or more, call the number on the screen now and speak with a live healthcare consultant. Don't wait. Get the coverage you need now.
Welcome back for the final segment of today's edition of the Clarence Bud Show. If you were with us yesterday, you know that we talked about the fact that everything that comes up doesn't necessarily need to come out. I understand full well that, for a lot of people, it's been so long since they've had a thought that someone would think made any sense at all. When they finally have one, they feel the need to either share it with everybody or act upon it. We talked about the guy that was stuck in traffic on the elevated portion of the I-10 over the Atchafalaya Spillway that thought to himself, dude, you know what would be really cool if I ran across both lanes of the interstate and jumped over the bridge down into the water on the Atchafalaya Spillway. Remember that? Dude ended up spending 3 hours treading water before rescuers could get to him. He said, man, God rescued me. My faith got me through. No, I think it was God said, you too stupid to get in heaven. We're going to leave you down there for a while. Just when you thought couldn't get any crazier, enter the Taco Bell in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm sorry, Nashville. Not to disparage the good folks in Knoxville. Nashville, Tennessee. A shift leader at a Taco Bell there thought it would be a good idea to encourage the employees there to engage in playing with fireworks inside the Taco Bell. So the shift manager, out of concern for the customers, said, all right, y'all go lock the door so customers can't come in, and we'll play with fireworks. So they did that. Then she decided it'd be a good idea if we take the fireworks and put them in a trash can and set them off. So they did that. Before the fireworks ignited, they all, you can't make this stuff up. They all ran outside the Taco Bell so that they could film the fireworks going off on their cell phones inside the Taco Bell. Here's where the whole thing went south. Remember I told you to protect the customers, they locked the doors to keep the customers out. After igniting the fireworks, they run outside to film it and accidentally locked the freaking door. Needless to say, the trash can catches on fire, gets out of control. Now you got to call the fire department. $30,000 worth of damage to the Taco Bell. And the 25-year-old shift manager now facing criminal charges. Being held on a $5,000 bond at the Davidson County Jail in Nashville. And law enforcement says you can expect additional charges to be filed as well. Listen, y'all. Everything that comes up doesn't necessarily need to come out. And just because you had finally, after all this time, an idea that you thought was a good one, does not necessarily mean that it is. So many jokes, so little time. Tell you what's not a joke. If you like great barbecue, 10655 Coursey Boulevard, come see us at Bayou Smokehouse, the home of old school barbecue. It is where each and every week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we shoot the show live. Great people, great food, great atmosphere. And today, my man, Uncle Roy, not here? Not going to be here today. Ah, okay. Well, any other week, on Wednesday, I call him the Kingmaker. Roy Fletcher, more affectionately known as everybody's favorite Uncle Roy, produces his podcast here. And of course, Bill Profita of the Exiles produces their show here as well. So you never know who you're going to see when you come in to Bayou Smokehouse. Listen, new addition, by the way, to the menu. The smoked turkey legs. Oh my goodness. We're talking, number one, American farmed turkeys, okay? And none of that foreign stuff, all kind of stuff shot up in it that you have no idea what it is, shipped over here and then cooked and served to you. No, American farmed turkey legs only. Season them up and smoke them for 4 hours. We're talking a pound to a pound and a half of meat each. You know what a lot of folks do? They'll come in, get their smoked turkey leg and a side order. Chow down, and what's left, because again, we're talking a pound to a pound and a half of meat. What's left, what do we Louisiana folks do with something like that? Oh, we take that puppy home and throw it in a pot of beans and get ready to lock the door. Pure and simple. If you have not been, as of yet, it's your right as an American to live a deprived life. But if you're a Louisianian, like your buddy Clarence, you know good food and you know good people. 10655 Coursey Boulevard is where you get it all. Time's up, y'all, and I gotta go. But as I am so fond of saying, at the end of every single show, you know what? I give it to you. This day, maybe more so than any other. You're right. America, in no way, shape, or form are we perfect. But for this old boy's money, it's the best there is. And God knows there's no place else on his green earth that I'd rather be. Speaking of the good Lord, you realize he loves you, right? And I hope you know that I do too. Then again, it really doesn't matter because there ain't a doggone thing you can do about either one. We'll see you tomorrow. God bless.